Hi, I'm Kieran.
I'm Nick.
And we're two of the run testers, and today we're going to be looking at two really exciting shoes. We've got the Nike Vaporfly Next and the Adidas Adizero Adios Pro. And we're going to be taking a good look at these two shoes, comparing and contrasting, and hopefully helping you work out which ones you should buy if you're in the market for some. So let's take a look. So before we get into how we found running in these shoes, and we've put in a lot of miles in both of these, we are going to take you through the stats.
I think really one of the key stats on these shoes is how light the Vaporfly is, and all the next generation of shoes like the Adios, the Alphafly, the Endorphin are all fairly significantly heavier than the Vaporfly, so pure weight, still hard to beat. So when it comes to design, the Nike Vaporfly Next has this vapor weave upper, which Kieran, you notice this kind of bunches, it comes a bit like a crisp packet, but it does get a very tight lockdown fit around the midfoot without offset laces. It also repels water slightly, you don't need that. In the midsole you've got Nike Zoom X foam. This is the premium foam on the market, very soft, very bouncy, very light, and within that you have Nike's carbon plate, its special shape, which is kind of where the magic happens in terms of that propulsion forward. And then the outsole is a pretty standard racing outsole. There's not a lot of rubber on there, but there's a bit more than you got on the 4%. I've had no problems with durability on these shoes, I have to say, and they're definitely more stable and grippy than the Alphafly and the 4%. So yeah, it's a pretty good shoe for those long distance races as a result.
And then in contrast over here, you've got the Adizero Adios Pro, and you've got a mesh upper, that's Cellar Mesh. Adidas calls Cellar Mesh, that's their version of mesh. I think the interesting thing, it has got some sort of hatching on the inside, a sort of soft fabric that's stuck on the inside to add comfort. It's nice and pliable, it's nice and breathable. I don't think it's very waterproof because there is, it's basically water can go right in. You've got pretty standard sort of central lacing, although it does have an interesting detail where there are extra lace holes. Yeah. So I think you can have a sort of bit of variety in how you lace this down to find a perfect fit. And that also follows through on the other side, on the tongue, which is kind of stitched in. On the bottom you have Light Strike Pro, which is, we don't know too much about this foam, but it's Adidas's lightest, most responsive foam to date. And then the interesting thing where these differ is there isn't a foot-long carbon plate. In here, what you get are basically 5 energy rods, which sit under each of the metatarsals, so one under each of the toes, and that is what is doing the hard work there. And there's also a plate in the back that sits on top of the midsole, which is a nylon plate, which is supposed to help with kind of stability at the ankle joint as well. Flip them over and you've got some rubber on the outside. It's fairly smooth, it's not particularly grippy. And I think, again, durability, you can see it sort of smoothed off already. And as with the Vaporfly, you've got 2 bits here that are sort of slightly reinforced where the heel will strike. In terms of the collars, I think where these two sort of slightly differ, there's probably a bit more padding when it comes to the Adios Pro. It's a bit more going on here.
The Vaporfly is just that band inside, the actual top is very thin. So on the fit side, I always went true to size in the Vaporfly and I never had any kind of problems.
You do notice with the uppers that they are a bit baggy, right?
They're a bit weird, but I think you get such a tight lockdown fit here that I don't mind a bit of bagginess around the toes, to be honest.
I love to be able to wiggle my toes in a shoe. I think it's a really important thing. I don't want them to be too restrictive, and they're not. But it just, when you look down, it's just a little bit off-putting, I found. But
and interestingly, the Adios Pro has skewed away from Adidas's typical thing of having a very narrow shoe where you have to size up. It fits well. Yeah,
I ran in an 8.5, which is the normal size, and I found it sort of perfect. It was initially when I put my foot in, I had to work a little bit to get the tongue to sit comfortably and get this section sort of to go up over the sort of front mid of my foot. But once they were on, I found the fit to be perfect. Nice lockdown. They really sort of hug the foot really nicely, and these are the most comfortable Adi shoes maybe I've ever worn.
Yeah, and actually I use Kieran shoes, which are half a size down from my normal size, and they were comfortable. Like, I had a little bit less room in the toe than I probably would for a full marathon, but you can definitely go true to size, and even half size down, it wasn't uncomfortable, which is unheard of compared to like the normal Adios in Boston where you normally have to size up. So running performance, we're going to start with the Vaporfly because obviously we've had this shoe for a long time, over a year and a half, and it's been very good to us, it's fair to say. I've done my fastest half marathon, my best marathon, if not my actual quickest, because it was in a Loch Ness on an undulating course.
Time? Hit us with some time.
Loch Ness, that was a 2:36. PB's 2:33, but I was second at Loch Ness, so they gave me a quake, which is the best prize of all. So yeah, it's fair to say that I really like this shoe. You've also done some great races in this shoe.
I've set my marathon PB in this, which is a 2:57. And yeah, and as I always say, once you've run a PB in a shoe, it's sort of hard not to like that shoe.
Yeah, so actually I think at first, because I love the 4% so much, I struggled to kind of warm to this slightly aggressively green shoe. But then when I did some very good races in it, I definitely warmed up to it. It's very hard to find fault with any part of the running performance of the Vaporfly. It's so nimble and soft and lightweight and bouncy and fast, and there's really no distance that I think you could run in it that it wouldn't be either your first or second choice basically shoe in the world. Yeah. So even now it's basically fantastic to run in.
If it were a more durable shoe, right? If it had full durability, you'd lace it up more often, right?
I'd use it for all my long runs and everything. Like probably anytime I'm doing a hard session, you'd happy to use the shoe if you weren't just worried about it falling apart, and it's 240 quid. So I've had this for a long time. I'm sure a lot of you are running it as well. It's brilliant. So I guess it's key to say how it compares to this brand new contender on the block, which Kieran's done a lot more miles than me, and it's fair to say.
Yeah, so I've put in about 50 miles in this, and I've done various different I did some sort of fast marathon pace, I did some track repeats, and I also did some slower miles, the kind of miles that you might be doing when you're hanging out your arse at the end of a marathon, just to see how well protected you would get. And I've been really impressed, actually. I also put both of these on and ran in them at the same time, just to sort of compare
both right foot ones as well, which is weird.
Exactly, the left, super uncomfortable. but I think it's we've been waiting for Adi to get a little bit closer to these shoes, and it's been a long time coming. And I think they have made a massive kind of leap forward, and this does move in the right direction. I have to say, it's not quite there yet, and this does run sort of differently in some ways. This I still think has more punch, and because of that, I think I would probably be veering towards racing a marathon in this still.
So yeah, I did one run in this morning for the first time today. Did an hour kind of with half Kieran and half 6-minute miles. And yeah, that really rings true. To me, it doesn't tip you forward in the same way, and you don't get the same explosive toe off, I think.
Even when you first put them on, you feel the difference. This one sort of immediately makes you want to sort of pop up onto your forefoot, whereas these are a little bit flatter.
Yeah.
And even for me, they sort of rocked me back and had me out on my heels a little bit.
It's a 9 or 10 millimeter drop, something like that. But it's all here. Look how fat it still is here in this part of the shoe. So it doesn't feel like you're getting that real falling forward motion you get on some of the shoes. And so on that very brief run, to me, it felt much more like a cruiser for marathon distance, whereas I do think you can race shorter distances in these, and they're as good as anything on the market.
Yeah. For some people, I think that's actually going to be a benefit, right? Because this shoe, when you sort of start to lose or you drift or your form goes, is not very forgiving. And actually this is going to work best for you when you're running really well at a high clip. This one, I think, actually I found was a little bit more forgiving when you weren't running quite so well. You could be a little bit more back on your mid to sort of heels and running badly, and it would just be a bit kinder.
I also think this was probably slightly more unstable. It wasn't a problem. I don't think it's as unstable as some of the other shoes out there, but that's got quite that big wide forefoot sometimes helps, I think, with turning corners. And I mean, this does sort of have a little bit of a prototype to it. I don't know if the final version in shops will have this smooth. It might maybe put a little bit more there, but it is a big chunky shoe, and that's kind of the way everything's going, I guess.
And I felt actually with these, in the comparison on the foot, you could feel like this one you sort of sat a little bit lower in the shoe as well, which I think sort of helped with that overall feel of sort of stability.
Yeah.
But the uppers, the uppers are sort of super comfortable on this. And it's a shoe that I think a lot of people are going to be able to put on, and it will disappear on their foot, and they'll run happily in it across a range of different sort of distances and paces. But.
Yeah.
So Nick, it's marathon morning. You've got one choice of shoes to wear, obviously, because you haven't got 4 feet. Which ones are you wearing?
I'll have one of these in each foot. I'll be wearing the Vaporfly out of these two, and I think that'll be the same if I was running a 5K, a 10K, a half. How about yourself?
I think I really enjoyed running in these, but I think actually I'm still with the Vaporfly. I think they're just a little bit more punchy, and yeah, I just think they perform a little bit better for that, full out marathon PB attempt.
I also would say, this is a lot cheaper, which is interesting, and that does make it a slightly more appealing shoe in a way. It's 70 quid less, something like that, I think. That to me is quite a lot of big, but if you are buying your one special race shoe, I think I'd probably be prepared to pay the extra for the Vaporfly, just because how much I prefer running it. But I haven't done enough miles in the shoe necessarily to maybe make such a big claim, but I do think the performance is there on that one just a bit more than this, though this is still a great shoe. that's it. That's our comparison video for the Vaporfly and the Adios Pro. We've also got a huge roundup of carbon shoes, checking every single one that we've tried out. Go watch that as well, and we'll do some other comparison videos. But let us know if there's something you want. If you really want the Adios compared to the Hoka Clifton Edge, we probably won't do that video, but we will respond to your comment, I promise. Do like and subscribe, ring the little bell, and we'll see you next time.